Wells only and his guests are not responsible for any losses you may accrue for having weak hands. Where the haters at? Yeah, bitches still ain't showed up. And now, right, we got HEX, flawless uptime. People thought this was a joke. Now they're mad at the chart. It's lullaby music, really, right? It's hard to believe that something like this exists. I get it, but you just gotta come to terms with reality. It just exists. Nothing we can do about it. Buy a steak and chill, baby.
Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. Yep. That's it. Yep. That's the secret. The God well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. Shit, motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. I mean, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Y'all deep. Everybody. My God. Ex-Asians, bro. Everybody. Australians, man. Everybody gets me. Yo, Wendy's done told you. Dollar Club done told you. Everybody done told you. It's crazy. Yo, happy Wednesday to all my human beings out there. It's been a while since I've graced y'all with my annoying presence. I hope everybody's doing all right. I got a special guest and a slash author with us today, Mr. Mark Wild, the author of Second Crypto Revolution, excuse me. Kind of feels like the second revolution, though. Not gonna lie. How you doing, Mark?
Very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Nah, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about your book. As you know, education is really the most important thing with what we're trying to accomplish, right? Because as we all know, the space is littered with furus, and that being people that pretend to know what is the right set of informational pieces. But in reality, what they're doing is just misinforming whoever comes across the gate. And this is what causes people to end up in Celsius's, FTX's, Binance's, etc. I mean, all these places are where you go to lose money. Long story short, you could try to make money, but the one thing that I just don't understand is why you would put your hard-earned income in a place where you don't know if you're going to get it back. That's something that I just don't get, because if you talk to any successful long-term investor, rule number one is you don't lose your money. That's rule number one. So if you're out here taking chances, sticking your money in glory holes that you don't know what's on the other side, well, that's, you get what you work for, literally. So this is why education is really at top of mind, especially for me. Because if you've been watching me for a while, you know full and well that I'm not here to tell you you're going to get rich. I'm here to tell you how you could build wealth and the thought process required in order to achieve that. Because in order for you to speculate and flip, what we call ticks, and where I come from, to make a significant amount of money daily, that requires some skill that the average person just can't fathom. So when you go on here and watch these fool rules telling you about trading crypto tickers and all this stuff, you got to just understand you're just being set up for the kill. And that's been shown to you numerous ways. And, today, December 2022, this is basically 2 years after I started streaming almost. And you guys know full and well that the fake crypto space is full of traps. So how do you avoid them? Well, there's only one way to avoid it, And it's by actually educating yourself, arming yourself with the right information. Because in the 21st century, in the present type of war that we've been fighting over the past 40, 50 years, maybe even 60, it's an informational war. It's a psychological war. The only way you survive and succeed in the life that we are living is by having all of the information that you need to actually be successful when there's a lot of misinformation being thrown at you 24/7. And this is pretty much the main reason why we like to focus on education. So, Mark, if you wouldn't mind going into your book, kind of what motivated you to write it in the first place, just a little bit about yourself, just go on ahead and take over. I don't mind.
Sure. Thanks very much. Okay, everyone. My name is Mark, as introduced. Originally, I come from Poland. However, I haven't lived there for, I don't know now, almost 20 years or something. I spent a few years in a cold, rainy Ireland and decided it's definitely not for me. 300 days of rain and cold weather per year. Pretty much waiting all year for the summer, which never comes, was something which I couldn't handle too well, which made me move to Southeast Asia about 12 years ago, I think. I've been all around here, Thailand, Cambodia, Burma for 5 years actually, working in hospitality industry. So I used to work for travel agencies, I used to work for river cruises, I used to work for hotels, pretty much all the way until 2020. If I can call it like this, I discovered crypto in 2017, put some money into it, played around, trying to figure out how it all works and what to do, what not to do, learning sometimes the hard way, namely, buying into buying into heating up market, right? Buying into the I would say end of the bull market, almost end of the last 6 months of 2017, early 2018. It didn't turn out that bad because pretty much, whatever I put in and whatever gains I saw, then it got zeroed out in a way. So like Wave said, I haven't lost money, but I haven't really made anything in that bull market. So came back to whatever money I put. But I left it in crypto. I was like, okay, well, now I'm just going to wait, because what's the point? If you put, let's say, $10,000 into it, you saw for a while $50,000, and now you're back to 10,000. You're like, why would you cash out really? You're at the same place you were. So I was like, okay, well, fine, you can just stay there. And then 2 years later, roughly 2 years later, a good friend of mine, he mentioned HEX, he mentioned Richard Hart. I started to look into it. My initial response was as well like, yet another project, another whatever promise is going to be there. I actually don't care. But then, as it happens, because of COVID as well, and hospitality industry getting completely decimated, I found myself having a lot of time on my hands. So believe it or not, but if you still remember the first version of the HEX website with all the, maybe not all, but some of the YouTube links to Richard's Hart streams pretty much, or videos in general, some of them as long as 8 hours, I just watched them all for start. I just stared at the screen and sometimes just listened doing something else, one after another, and something clicked, and it was something like, well, there is something into it. This guy is talking, I don't know, differently than everyone else. Stuff he's saying makes sense. Then I started to read more about it, websites. There was this document back then as well. I think it's still available somewhere online, which was pretty much describing HEX contract in layman's terms, right? Because obviously I can't read any programming language, so I have no idea what's there, but it was nicely described what it actually does, what it doesn't, and so on. And then I decided to swap all the crypto I still had. initially gradually in March 2020 for HEX. And then I was lucky enough to catch this first HEX pump caused by Gold Whale. I think that was the one which doubled the price, and the price never got back to where it was. And then I decided, okay, in that case, I'm just putting everything else in it. I mean, all the crypto I had, a little bit of fiat money as well. And in the beginning, I was just sitting in it, experimenting with short stakes just to also see how they work. And I think that was around summer 2020, a few months before the big payday, where I actually spent quite a few days designing my staking ladder for the next 15 years. Still probably back then not knowing much if I'm doing it correctly or not. But
that goes.
Right now to do it as well. And the rest is history. So I think the interesting part here is that I left back then. It was like the beginning of COVID or stuff like this. I left one of my jobs my job in Cambodia in a hotel because I was promised another contract in beautiful Saudi Arabia on the desert. And then everything went down the hill, right? So Saudi Arabia closed the borders, like almost everyone else. They stopped issuing visas, and all those things collapsed, right? So I went to Mexico back then because it was the only place semi-open. Some hotels were operating, some people were still coming. Initially with an idea, maybe I'll find a hospitality job there. But HEX just kept growing, and after a few months, I just realized, hey, wait a second, maybe I will not have to do this anymore.
Right.
Maybe whatever I already put and whatever I would be able to pull out of the stakes as they come out, and I did have a staking ladder, like I mentioned. So some of them were coming out monthly in 2021, some of them quarterly, some of them yearly, all the way until day 5555. So basically, I was like, well, maybe that will actually work. And well, so far it worked until today, right? We are almost by the end of 2022. Even if nothing would have happened with the price of HEX, I would have stayed here forever. I could probably be doing it for the next 15 years. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like, I'm not, I don't believe it's going to be that way, but if that was the worst case scenario, then I'm still fine. Okay, enough about me. What about the book, right?
Yeah.
2 years passed, roughly, maybe a year and a half into HEX, and I feel incredibly lucky and incredibly privileged to have discovered HEX, trusted the contract, and having done the moves I've done. And I felt I just wanted to give something back, right? I obviously, along the way, I onboarded quite a few people. Some were easier, some were tougher to do. Some put a little money, some put quite a lot. But I found this is like, okay, it works, but I keep answering the same questions over and over again, starting with very basics, and then depending how responsive my onboards are, we go deeper if needed, right? Yeah. But generally, I would say 90% had either no knowledge of crypto or very limited knowledge of crypto, so we had to start from very beginning. I'm not a YouTube guy. I do have a channel, but I don't really keep it very active. I don't do maybe more other activities, and I just felt like, well, why not writing a book, right? I knew there were 2 books about HEX published before. I actually published 3 books before on different subjects under different pen name, which were not anything serious about crypto, more like travel books and so on. But if I could contribute in any way to the HEX ecosystem, that would be most likely writing a book, because this is something I knew how to do. And yeah, I could probably spend hundreds of hours or thousands of hours learning how to make a successful YouTube channel and then trying to build it. But I haven't seen much value in it, given how many good streamers we have already, right? So I would just get another one who maybe would make it, maybe not. But do we really need more streamers? Of course, more is better. But my thinking here was like, let's do something different. We had 2 books already on the market. When I was already writing, there was a second book published about the HEX ecosystem. Didn't really worry me much because I wanted to focus on HEX, Pulse Chain, and PulseX even before its launch. So the idea was like, well, I will put all the knowledge I can find and experiment on the testnet and generally trying to make it comprehensive for people. And that's how the book was born, pretty much.
Nice.
With an idea in mind as well, that I would like to make it as simple as possible to hopefully be able to onboard people who either have no idea about crypto, don't know even where to start, or for the people like you mentioned, Wales, like maybe they lost loads of money in one of the big scams or hacks or rug pulls or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe they've done it multiple times. So basically, well, they might think they know crypto, but they've been doing it all wrong. So yeah, if you're one of these persons reading the book, then maybe you can skip some chapters because maybe you don't need to learn, how to set up your MetaMask wallet if you already have one. But there is a little bit more philosophy there in it. Okay, everything Richard was preaching about, everything you are preaching about, Wales, all this self-custody and independent contracts, not your keys, not your crypto, everything else.
Right.
It's all there in various points, just showing that, well, if you do it any other way, you are at a tremendous risk. And some of you have already seen it, some of, or even experienced it, some haven't. So yeah, so the idea was make it very simple. I do have an introduction about crypto and generally finance in general on a very basic level with a little bit of history there. But I kind of try to make it in a way like, okay, for example, you have to explain to people what crypto is or what blockchain is. How do you do that? What do you actually say, and what you hold on to, what you don't say, to make someone understand it without all the technical needs, right? So I simplified it as much as I could. And I also had the feeling sometimes like, maybe this is not entirely true, because if you take this into consideration, then this is something else. But I was like, okay, you know what? I will just make a disclaimer in the beginning saying, look, this is not aimed to argue whether or not I describe blockchain properly to you or what cryptocurrency is to you. I just want to make sure you get an idea how it works. Do you really need to understand the different consensus methods on different blockchains when you just want to put some money into crypto and hopefully save yourself? I don't think so. So basically, I only just skimmed this subject to kind of be like, okay, it has to be mentioned, but it's not going to be explained, because I don't want you to, as a reader, I don't want you to get to chapter 3, let's say, and say, you know what, screw that, I'm not going to read it anymore because I don't understand anything this guy is saying.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. And I've seen some books like this before. I've read some books about like whatever, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or I got it because I've been in the space for quite 5 years now, right? I spent time reading, watching everything. But when I'm thinking about your average person, it's just like you pick one of these books and you're probably out after chapter 1, because they just throw all these big words which maybe are not so big for us crypto people anymore. And if you've never read anything about this, you're just lost after a few pages. You have no idea what these guys are
a whole
talking
bunch
about.
of technical jargon.
Yeah.
If
so
you don't
that's
write
what
it
I try
correctly.
to avoid. Yeah. That's what I try to avoid. And just make it like an easy to use guide with a little bit of theory and philosophy. Detailed explanation of what HEX is, what Pulse Chain is going to be, what PulseX is going to be, and then there's like a practical chapter for people who never started. So, okay, how do you set it up? How do you actually buy HEX or get HEX, or in the future Pulse Chain, PulseX? How do you store it?
Right.
So there's the security chapter as well, which talks about all of these things, like stay away from centralized exchanges as much as you can. Use them only for a brief period of time if you really have to. I mean, we all do, I guess, at some stage, but basically try to not trust them with anything.
Yeah, for sure. Don't treat it like a house, right? Because
not. So a little bit of MetaMask, different setups of like separate laptop for crypto, not using your phone, a little bit of your physical security with examples from around the world, how people bragged about crypto and got shot for that. So basically, had holes drilled in their legs.
Right.
So, just make sure random people don't really know you're doing well. Because that's not good for you. There is a small chapter, not very detailed, but I also wanted to put like a little bit introduction to the subject of multiple tax residencies, second passports, and so on. I keep finding it that well, I mean, the country you are from or the country you live in might not be optimal to live for all your life, or to make sure you're not getting screwed too much on the taxes or whatever.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people, I find that many people, even if they are not planning to move, they also have sort of a blindfold. They just don't know what the options are out there, right? That you could actually create multiple setups in all kinds of ways. Whether you live in another country or you don't, if you are willing to be, a little flexible, then things can happen for you, right? I know a few examples. For example, it's not probably specifically crypto people, but because of everything which is happening in China right now, there has been a surging demand for second passports from the Chinese market. People want to leave that country, a lot of them. And one way of doing is, if you have enough money, and we are probably talking for the passport part, we're talking from like $100,000 up. You can become citizen of some random Caribbean island within 6 to 9 months. If you're willing to spend a little bit more, I don't know how much actually, let's say 150 to 200, it might be a better Caribbean island. And these tools pretty much, they give you an ability to travel probably to even more countries than a Chinese citizen without any visas. You can open international bank accounts in different places, and you don't necessarily have to live on that island. You don't really want to, right? I mean, there are some requirements. Maybe you have to show up there once in a while. Maybe you have to find some other way. So I'm just highlighting this in the book. Like, look, it might happen to you that maybe today or tomorrow or the other day you put, let's say $10,000 into HEX or whatever. And for now, it's like, okay, what this guy's talking about, me and second passports, like, why would I care? But then you will notice in 2-3 years or something, maybe that $10,000 now is $10 million. And, some people might be after you in terms of taxes or your personal safety, security, whatever it is, wherever you're from. And suddenly you'll be like, oh, like maybe I actually need a second passport, or maybe I need an additional residency. So I'm just putting it out there, being like, look, there are options. I give you a few examples. Obviously, these keep changing. So when I was writing the book, Portugal still was considered a crypto haven. Since 2023, it's not going to be. It's not going to be very, very bad, but it's not as good as it was. It's changing. It's fluid. The countries change the regulations. They change the laws all the time. But this is something to be aware of, that when the time is right for you, then there are options out there, and maybe you should consider them, right? So for whatever reasons you want to do. Yeah. Right. And just to finish off, because that was quite a long monologue,
No
I'd say, okay, why second crypto revolution? I see it in a way that, okay, we could consider, or at least I consider, that the invention of cryptocurrencies was the first crypto revolution, let's call it, or the first.
Yes,
I
agree with your title,
revolution.
by the way. To me, your title makes 100% sense.
All right, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
so basically, first crypto revolution, or even, let's say, call it the first financial revolution of our times, of our generations, when you are between, 20 to 50 or 20 to 40 something. That was probably one of the major, a financial revolution in a way, if you caught it somehow, either 10 years ago or 2 years ago, doesn't matter. Yeah. But then, probably roughly by 2017, 2018, we had this amazing amount of ICOs and scams and all kinds of things which went wrong. Obviously, there were things which went wrong before, like Mt. Gox, but it was an acceleration pretty much of how, in how many ways you can actually lose your money simply because you don't know what you're doing. Everyone with a little bit evil thought and some skills could put something together and basically steal people's money, and very often just walk away from it because there was no real way, or no real laws, or no real things to stop you from that, right? And many people capitalized on that in a very bad way. And it seems like a lot of people still want to do that, right? And what we see in 2022 with collapses of, Luna, Celsius, FTX, just shows that it just keep happening, and it will keep happening. I think for at least very considerable amount of time. And in the same time, what we have, right? We have Richard Hart coming on scene in, well, let's call it 2019 when HEX was created. And he gives us a product which breaks all these rules and breaks all these possibilities of you actually being scammed or, just having your money taken away.
It's funny you word it like that. It's
Yeah.
funny you word it like that, but we'll come back to it because it's
Okay.
good for after. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just don't want us to forget
Sure.
that because I'm glad you said
Okay.
that. Go
Okay.
ahead, continue. I'm sorry.
So he gives us this product where
Right.
you make all the decisions. You can put money in it or not. You can stake it or not. And as long as you don't make it wrong in a way, you lose your money because you lost your private keys, or you got hacked because I don't know, you were using it somewhere where you shouldn't, and all the things, right? I mean, there's ways you can scam yourself in a way, or you can hack yourself, and it will have nothing to do with the HEX contract, right? It will just be your decisions or lack of them, which can screw you, but not the contract itself. So I came up with an idea. Okay, so perhaps Richard is coming in, giving us this product, and he's like putting for in the beginning maybe a small dent into all the scams and everything which is happening around us. But the more popular it gets, the bigger it gets. Then hopefully a lot of people, I don't think all of them, but hopefully a lot, will see it, and it will actually this will create that second crypto revolution, that someone actually created a product and is working on new products which are supposed to free us from all these ICOs, scams, hacks, rug pulls, and so on. So for me, that's the second crypto revolution, right? First, you could just participate in it by buying, holding, whatever. But then you have all these threats which are coming at you from multiple directions, and now you have safer products, better products, and basically that's the second revolution, right? And if you buy, let's say, around now, close to the potential bottom of the bear market, and you just hold to it for an additional few years, you might be in a very different place in a few years.
Yeah, you're gonna time travel into deep space, and you're not even gonna know how.
Nicely said.
Right? I mean, it's I explain it over and over, and to me it's so obvious, so simple. But let's focus on your title, because I think it's so apt, and it's apt for more than the few reasons that you laid out. When we read the Bitcoin white paper, it literally tells us in the first line what cryptocurrency is supposed to be. And what's happened is that over time, the so-called powers that be, the criminals, as I like to call them, have instituted ways to co-opt the existing structures of Bitcoin and Ethereum, such that they're essentially non-crypto today. Right. And how do we know this? Well, what do you think all these scams and exchanges and all these things come from? You think that people that only know how to code and know nothing about finance come up with this stuff? Well, if you believe that, well, you're part of the problem. Right. You're literally part of the problem. People take direction. Right. People do what they're told. And we see this time and time again, because if the financial system was there to provide the outlet that people are actually looking for, which is what you're sold via trading, right? Because the notion of trading is that you can click on a buy or sell button and make some money in fucking seconds. But the reality is far from that when you have no clue, right? And this is the problem. People step into this space thinking it's some type of get rich quick scheme. Like that's the biggest issue that the cryptocurrency space faces, not realizing that in fact it was erected because the money that you call a unit of account today literally sucks and doesn't account for anything and is worth nothing. And on a value to value basis, Everybody works for nothing. Everybody steals. Nobody receives any value. Everybody just takes. Now, what do I mean? Well, if you're using fiat to transact, what is that fiat worth? In reality, it's worth nothing, because you can't go anywhere and claim anything with that piece of paper, because that piece of paper by itself is always and forever an IOU. It doesn't matter whether you realize that or not as an individual. You see? And this is the trap that they have people caught in, because they think that matters. But this is why economic crashes happen time and time again, is because that actually does not matter. The amount of dollars and cents in your account, or whatever the name is, right, doesn't actually matter. Whatever amount of fiat units sit in your account are irrelevant, because at the end of the day, what you hold in that isn't yours. You don't control it, and you don't determine anything in regards of it. And that's the first thing that you have to understand about money. Because why do we invest anyway? Why do we do anything with money anyway? Why do we care about money? Well, we care about money because money is actually the center of everything that revolves in society. Well, what's funny about that, though, is that they'll tell you, oh, but money is the root of all evil. Well, is it? Then why the fuck do we need it for everything? Do they want you to be evil? Is that really what they mean with that? So what's the purpose of that comment? Because it doesn't come from people that are struggling to get money because they don't have any. That is not coming from us. We didn't make up that statement. That's for fucking sure, because we need the money to survive. We're the poor people, right? The ones writing the books about things that the billionaires don't give a shit about. The ones streaming for free because we want to get the information out there. Those of us creating websites, creating products, just putting out the factual information. We're not looking for compensation. If we get it, hey, great. But at the end of the day, we understand that if everybody isn't properly educated, it doesn't matter how many billions you have in your account. We're all subject to the same fate. We're all subject to the same negative outcomes, period. That's just a fact. Now, how do we know that? Well, ask all the billionaires you know running around saying shit they wouldn't say unless they had billions. That's how you know. It's not rocket science. So, how do you get to a point where you can say you're sovereign, you're free, this, that, and the other? Because people just love to talk about it. Nobody actually likes to take action on that front, right? I mean, just the simple fact that it's been 15 years and people still pretend to know, still pretend like they don't know what cryptocurrency is in the cryptocurrency space, it should raise your ear, right? It should lend some caution to the alert, to the bat signal, or to something. Like, you got to realize somebody's lying somewhere. And this is why books like Mark's are so important, because it's like, how many Bitcoin books exist? Hundreds. There's only 2 to 3 hex books. And these books are going to be the ones that actually have valid information that are going to allow people to find some type of outlet. Because as Mark put it a few minutes ago, all that you're going to find out there is just traps. All the information that you're seeing out there just isn't valid. It's not lending itself to anything that is beneficial to you as an individual. So you have to wonder, who is it that these entities are calling for? What are they trying to provide you with? Because it's clearly not economic freedom. Economic freedom encompasses multiple things. It's not just a lot of money. That's exactly why crypto exists. And people have a hard time understanding that, because they're still talking about stables. They don't understand this isn't an investment game. It's not. This is a life-changing game. And that's why you're paying 2x to live versus last year. Everywhere. It doesn't matter where you're at. And let me tell you something. In case you haven't been paying attention, it's only going to get worse. So this is why crypto is critical. Crypto compounds the units of account that we call fiat. Fiat doesn't compound the crypto. That's really the short of the secret, right? Because once you take a unit fiat of account and throw it in there, you know, whether it's in a crypto account or whatever, you know, it's still that one unit of account, period. It never changes its value. What does change is the value of the items you can obtain with it. And right now, we're living at a very unique point in time where it's a whole lot cheaper to acquire crypto than it is to live. Now, I don't know if people really understand that, but you might want to sit there and think about what I just said for like 30 seconds, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, if you don't understand math and statistics, you might want to start figuring it out right now, because you're never going to see this dislocation in value ever again in your life. You're not. Here's the outcome, the probability, the probabilistic outcomes that I see based on the current macro environment and the mathematical facts of our monetary system. Right now, a hex costs like 2 to 3 cents, 2.5, 3 cents. That means that you can get more than 33 hex per dollar. Now, if you've been around, then you understand how hex moves. Now, if you've been around the crypto space, then you understand that there is only one crypto. Now, if you've been around the financial space, and you understand that there's nothing like hex. That's the process. That's the process of elimination, or process of understanding as to what is going on. Because all of us know a little bit of everything. But it's just like you said, Mark. Richard puts in his 2 cents, you put in your 2 cents, I put in my 2 cents, and together, all of us make $1 eventually, and so on and so forth. And this is why having the right information, going out from the right people that you know are not going to feed you some nonsense, then you know you can take that information and pass it forward. You know, this is why Richard Hart is so seminal in many ways, because he really has been preaching this stuff for 4, 5, 6 years, right? Like, he's learned along the way, figured it out along the way, and he's been educating a lot of us. And a lot of us have been replicating his credos, his credences, his laws, right? Whatever you want to call them, because they work. They're true. They're literally what crypto is based on, and we can see and we know from our own experiences, right? Our a priori experiences, that the system is designed to remove middlemen. Now, what are we seeing over the past couple months? Well, we've been seeing the system literally collapse onto itself. But the problem is that if you're not educated, you actually think cryptocurrency is hurting. But in reality, cryptocurrency is just fine sitting on the beach. There's nothing wrong with crypto. Fake crypto, though, I don't know. I don't care. I hope it all goes away. In fact, I hope it disappears. That's a fact. I have no problem with people trying to steal, scam, rob, lie, cheat. I have no problem with them failing. And you shouldn't either. Because everybody that's perpetrating a fraud is a criminal. FTX, Luna, Celsius, 3AC, all the protagonists. I don't have to give you the list. You've all been around. If you've been around longer than 6 months, you know exactly who I'm talking about. BlockFi company, all of them fools. And here's the sad part out of all of that. The sad part is that we still have people within the community reaching out to these losers that were perpetrating or promoting scams, as if they're really going to come over here and do anything. Like, you people are just fucking morons. There's nothing else I can say about that. But you should know you're a moron, because those people are paid shills. Unless you're going to pay them to talk about Hex, Stop looking like an idiot on the internet. Just a good piece of advice, because that's ultimately what it ends up looking like. Now, we find ourselves again, right? We got a couple of Hex books. We got Richard trying to do his outrage marketing. We got Hexicans trying to figure out how to make this thing go viral, right? Now, we know that one by one onboarding is difficult, but that's ultimately what is actually going to work, because that's what made Bitcoin big, right? You could say it was the movies, the documentaries, or whatever, and the books and all of that, but you got to remember, Bitcoin's been around since 2008, 2009. Normies still don't know what Bitcoin is. Very few people, as a percentage of the population, actually understand or even know Bitcoin exists. Never mind. So, for example, this is what they call cryptos on Wall Street: virtual currencies. Now, if you've been in finance for a little while, you know that they just call things whatever benefits them, because there's nothing virtual about anything except fiat units of account, right? Because as I stated a moment ago, that is literally predicated on nothing, because whatever claims existed when that system started 50 something years ago, 51 years ago, I mean, the monetary system was maybe 1% of what it is now back then. 1%. So essentially, the claims are worth basically 100x less from that point in time to now. And that's obviously putting it, kindly, and being generous with the devaluations, because a devaluation of the fiat unit of account is exactly why cryptocurrency exists in the first place. People have to understand, and they must realize, if you don't assess the situation quickly, you're going to be the person holding CBDCs, because that's literally where we're at right now. We could sit here and try to be cute and nice and kumbaya about it, but this is a real war. This is not a get rich quick thing. And I think that that's what has people looking at this all wrong, and getting themselves in these pretty ridiculous situations like Luna. I mean, I don't even understand how you keep your money in an exchange. I really don't understand that. I can't comprehend it, because these are institutions that you assume are institutions, right? Like, anytime you see something in crypto with titles, you got to assume it's a scam, because that's just not how it works. Because what you're then doing is introducing regulation into the fray. I'm tired of explaining this to you guys, but you'll figure it out eventually, because a lot of people like to pretend like I'll just make that shit up. But if you're not paying attention to what these regulators say and do, you become a victim. And you've been seeing it lately, because I called all that shit. All of it. So these are statements that are made to educate, right? Because just like you're writing a book, you have to think about what to put in that book. And just like you said, it was hard to just pick and filter the information that you thought would have made sense to the average person that's going to read this book, because it's not easy to get this information across. If anything, how you get that information across is probably the most important thing, because this is all new. How is some, in fact, we were talking about our close acquaintances before we actually went on stream, and how we've tried to onboard some, and we've been successful with some and not with others. And these are people that are successful by the normal standard of society. And, if you have family that's been around any kind of societal changes, they'll tell you people that don't pay attention to the change get swept up in it, i.e., they get taken out by it. I mean, ask all the farmers that didn't listen about the Industrial Revolution, or anybody that ignored wheeled vehicles and really thought horsed coaches were the way. I mean, this actually happened. You might not think about it, but these are things that happened. These are historic facts. Like, these things happen all the time. It's just like the journalists and when they was getting told to learn how to code because they were getting washed out by what? The internet, because they are clearly all frauds. How else do you get to the point where alternative media is the preferred source of news information? I mean, that's just how it goes. So, Mark, let me ask you, how did
Yeah.
you come to the decision? Like, how did you finalize the content that you wanted to put in the book? Because, like, when I think about onboarding, because this is a tool, this is an onboarding tool, this book. How do you come to the point where you're telling yourself, all right, this is the right way? Because I know you mentioned that you put different angles, right? Different point of views, different perspectives. But I think that the hardest one to get people to accept is the fact that they need to know crypto. Do you kind of highlight that as a somewhat of a fact in the book, or do you like, how do you allude to that in the book, if you do at all? Because it's kind of one of those things, man, where people are gonna get these books in a year, two, maybe even 10, and be like, "Where the fuck was I when
Mm-hmm.
this shit came out?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think there's a very very subtle mention of it because the first two chapters are quite short, but they focus mostly on defining what money is
right.
and a brief history of money and the banking as we know it. And these chapters pretty much end with the financial crisis of 2007 2008, which obviously coincides with the creation of Bitcoin shortly after. And then I go into explaining what crypto is in general, right? Or what was its history, was the definition, and so on. So this is this very subtle mention that, well, this is how it was, and this is just a natural step of evolution of finance. I didn't go that deep as you are going in terms of like, oh, you have to own crypto because it will save you.
Right.
Obviously, this is what I also believe in very strongly. However, I wanted to take people where it's probably the easiest to grab them. So a little bit on greed,
Hmm.
actually.
There's nothing wrong with
So
that.
the
That's why I was
idea,
curious, because
yeah.
the way I see it, you got to start somewhere before you realize
Mm-hmm,
what you're reached. It's kind of like, how do you know you found that treasure map where X marks the spot? You don't really know until you start actually digging in. So I agree that you got to find the most common thread that's going to hit most people. Because how do you get them to look a little further? That's what I really wanted to ask. Like, how do you get people to look a little bit further? And if the greed was your route, then I don't blame you.
mm-hmm,
You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Because that's
Yeah,
usually the
the
ticket.
idea here is, yeah, if it's supposed to be simple, if it's supposed to kind of encourage you that, well, you can actually make a life-changing wealth if you do it right. Then I was also hoping that eventually, when you jump that rabbit hole after a few years, you will also come to the same conclusions as you are coming, or as I'm
Right,
coming, and that you
right.
actually have to own crypto because that's
Yeah.
going to be the best
That's
scenario for your
that's the
life.
hope. I
Uh,
feel like that
yeah,
should be
but
the hope, because I
sure.
agree. We've been like, you see the streaming, you see all the stuff that
Mhm.
goes out, and it's hard to get people to understand that. They really have to come to that conclusion themselves. Being told,
Right.
yo, you need this, doesn't really answer that reality for you, because it's just one person telling you, hey, you need this, but what's the other proof? Because it's like I was saying a few minutes ago, like, we understand that we got to be in both systems until there's only one, but the average
Hmm.
person can't. I mean, hell, the average person in crypto doesn't even understand that, let alone a person that doesn't even know crypto. And I think that is really tough on the average person in the space to understand, because I mean, I see it all the time when people talk about stables and stuff. They don't understand that you can't be like, there's a difference between taking profits and acting like you're trading crypto. You know, when you're like in something like Hex, there is no stable. Like you're just playing yourself, because what you should be doing is accumulating compounding assets, right? And crypto is a compounding asset, because you can't get more dollars from dollars. You can't get more units of account from units of account. You have to make them work in order for them to produce something else. Now, with crypto, you just got to get the crypto one time and you're done. There's nothing else to do. It's going to produce you more dollars. All you have to do is wait. Now, that's hard for people to realize or see when the market's down 95%. But it's interesting because they forget the 1,000% it did before that. I don't know why, but what are you going to do? You can't help people that don't like looking at long-term time frames, right? They're going to get left behind anyway, so they don't ultimately matter. So how do you help? Do you try to help people understand that it's kind of a long-term scenario that they need to come to the table with, or do you kind of leave that open for interpretation?
Well, I'm trying to explain this as well. Like I'm showing some time frames there. So when I did get into crypto, when I bought Hex, more or less without giving very specific numbers, I'm just showing what it's helped me to achieve, right? So
Right.
I mean, obviously the biggest thing for me was like, well, if after 20 something years of pretty much hard, stressful work for other people, you are actually able to walk away from it. Because your crypto will take care of you, then I think what else you could want, right? Like we talked before. I mean, it's not about Lambos and penthouses in the Bahamas, right? It's about like you are not a slave anymore. You don't have to participate in the system, play the dirty corporate politics, and so on. So it gives sort of like, well, if you do it right, you can be free, and when you are free, you can actually decide what you will do. Coming back to your first question as well for a second, like when you mentioned if I actually try to push people to understand that crypto is the solution, I try to be very subtle on this, because for me, if someone is a real beginner, or someone who is just vaguely interested or just starts asking the first questions, I think it could be a wrong approach to dump all this knowledge, for example, you have on them right away, right? Being like, well, basically the whole system is crooked, everything is bad, and basically, you're a slave and they're going to destroy you. Because, if someone who has never really thought about this before starts reading about it for start, that might be like, oh, like I don't want to deal with this theories of conspiracy or something, right?
Right.
So I try to be, okay, there is a time and place for everything, of course, but, for someone who just works their full-time job and loves their local bank and so on, you don't want to tell them that everything stands on its head, because then they will just throw the book to the trash and be like, no, this guy's crazy, So
For sure.
I try to avoid that, and, if I decide to write something else in the future, maybe a second version, maybe another book, maybe an update, there is a blog on my website with excerpts from the book. I could continue it there, and then, or just go deeper on the next one. Like, if you read the first one and you actually made the right decisions, now it's time to learn more. Or then I can actually send you to your stream and some other valuable streams, being like, okay, now when you get it, it's time for you to get a little bit more, right? So step by step, that was my thinking here. Don't make them like, okay, the world is on fire, everything's collapsing, and you have to do it now or you're dead, because people don't like to hear it and they will not follow you pretty much.
No,
right?
They don't. They don't. I don't care. But hey, man, somebody got to start somewhere. But I agree with your approach, right? Because a book is not the same thing as a live stream. A book is something where it has to be kind of, think about it. This is why you should think about it. Here's some facts, and just let me drop the link to Mark's website in the chat for you guys, so you guys go take a look. But it's one of those things where we don't really know how much time we have left, but we know we don't have a lot of time left to act, right? Because you see what they're doing with the CBDCs, and we've been talking about CBDCs really since 2020. And in 2021, it became evident that they were really going to push hard on that front. And this year, they've really been laying down the groundwork, laying down the narrative so that people that are aware can understand that that's coming. Did you touch on CBDCs at all in the book by any chance?
I don't think so, actually. No, I don't think I
Yeah,
mentioned
probably
this.
not. It's cool. It's
Mhm.
just one of those.
Mhm.
It would have been interesting if you did, because how do you explain that in the midst of crypto, right? Because the average person, they don't realize money's already, digital. And I'm talking about people that, work in finance. Like they don't get that.
Mhm.
They think that because they can touch some semblance of cash that it's physical, and they don't realize that 98, 99% of actual, fiat units of account are digital. They don't circulate in the sense that they're traveling from one hand to another. So in that sense, it's important for people to realize that when you're onboarding, you have to help people realize certain aspects of the system just to push them over a little bit to understand and grasp. Because in my experience, I don't know if you touch on this in the book at all, but in my experience, um, the most difficult thing for a person to understand is the fact that money is already not physical. People really think money is a tangible thing. And I
Mhm.
mean, this is people that are in crypto on top of that. So it's not like it's just unique to people outside of crypto. It's unique to people, period. Or it's germane to the people, period. Like they just think that, and it's wrong. All money, as you know it, is already digital. And this is
Mhm.
why they can pursue the CBDC already, because nothing's going to change from your perspective. You already use CBDC, you just don't realize it. Now, yeah, for certain jurisdictions, this is the difference. For certain jurisdictions, they can already do what they want to with your financial situation. Like if you're in Thailand, I'm pretty sure they can just close your bank account if they feel like it. I know in my country, they sure as hell can. You can't even send money. I as an American have a hard time sending money through the SWIFT system to my country. And it works both ways. Now, if you don't know what the SWIFT system is, do your homework, because I'm not here to break that down. But if you're in crypto and you don't know what the SWIFT system is, you're not really in crypto. You think you are, but you don't really know anything. So you might want to start there, because that's one of the main reasons that crypto exists. The notion that you're not free to transact is appalling, and it's actually puts you in a position of slavery. You have no autonomy over your financial well-being, your economic well-being, or your just general well-being, because you're not free to transact. That's just simply put how it works. And if you don't grasp what that means, well, read the First Amendment, because that's the closest thing we have to a basic list of what our human rights are. That's the only reason we can reference the Constitution in any capacity, because of the Bill of Rights. It's not so much because of the other stuff. The other stuff is whatever, that could be changed. But the fact that you're a human and you have your own space, your own mind, your own this, your own that, that can never be changed. You can only believe that that's not true. And this is why crypto is so important. Because once you start diving into this space and you see the FTXs, the Lunas, the whatever, all the nonsense that's trash and not crypto, because this is how you really learn, because clearly people don't listen and don't learn from educated folks, or whatever the case is. They just don't take one thing that's true is people don't take all aspects of information into account. They do not. If they did, Richard Hart would not have to do outrage marketing, period. I mean, you got to realize that we're fighting an uphill battle from a social perspective. And the fact of the matter is that if we keep interacting with the outside forces and allowing them to dictate who we are, like what happens to Richard every time he walks into one of these stupid spaces with these freaking clowns, we're always going to look bad, period. And that's exactly what happens every single time. And what happens on top of that? We bump their fucking numbers up so they look even better. It's just what happens time and time again. So it's another one of those things where it's like, well, the Furus have the power, but guess what? You're giving it to them too. So how are we going to actually stand up and be the leaders of the second revolution, crypto revolution, when we're allowing ourselves to be subjugated by it? Never going to fucking happen, guys. Never. And you got to learn that. It's just not going to happen. Because you're saying, oh, this entity over here is more important than we are. So let's go over there and talk. And let's go over there and say, hey, we know what we're talking about. But nobody gives a fuck that we know. They don't. If they did, you think anybody else would be talking about crypto besides Richard Hart? No. Because nobody else clearly knows anything. Period. Fact. Not Elon, not Kim.com. No fucking body. The only people that actually know the fucking tech and the space are involved in the RH ecosystem. Fact. It's not an opinion. Just look around. You don't gotta take my word for it. It is what it is, right? And this is why I think it's so important for people in the community to understand that everybody has to play a role. It can't be just Wales. It can't be just Richard. It can't just be Mark. It has to be everybody. Because how else are we going to even get close to destroying Bitcoin and whatever influence it has? Because I don't know if you guys are aware, but the people that are involved in that aspect of crypto, meaning the fake crypto, are doing their damnedest to stand up whatever nonsensical words on paper they can come up with to ensure that nobody has the ability to do anything outside of Bitcoin. I don't even know if people are aware of that, but that's literally happening behind closed doors every day in this country, the US. Now, that's important because everybody else follows the US. They don't follow what fucking China's doing. Nobody gives a shit what China's doing. Nobody gives a shit what India's doing. Nobody gives a shit what the EU is doing. Nobody gives a shit what anybody's doing except the US. That's why the US has never provided any clear guidance on crypto. Doesn't have to. Because everybody's just going to put themselves in a position of folly as far as manufacturer consent goes, right? Because if you don't understand the system, that's exactly why you see people calling for regulation. Because they don't understand it's not actually required if you're doing real crypto. You're not going to get scammed. You don't have to worry about investor risk. All you have to do is understand that software is all you have to understand. There are no people to interact with. There are no advisors. There are no contracts for you to execute and sign. Where there is a counterparty, there is no counterparty risk. So why do regulators even exist in the first place? Maybe that's something that people should understand. Because this is, again, why crypto exists. Regulators exist because counterparty risk exists. Now, what does that mean? What that means is if somebody is creating an investment scheme, say like a hedge fund or investment fund of any sort, how else do you generate income as an investor? Well, it's by giving your money to some investment scheme of some sort like that, like a hedge fund, and hopefully they make you money and not lose it. That's about it. Or you're buying stocks or something of the sort, right? So if those are your only avenues, what's left? Nothing. You just got to change the money. And that's what crypto is. And I don't think people really realize that. Because if they did, they wouldn't be putting themselves in a frame of mind, right, that we all know is just not the one that's going to lead to success. Because it takes you down the path of chasing these referral link scams, right? And this is what the rest of the space is. This is why we have to write our own books. We have to do our own streams. We have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so that people don't, jump in front of the CBDC freight train. because that thing is coming 100 miles an hour. So Mark, tell me, how do you think people, now you living in Thailand of all places, right?
Hmm.
I like to think that these external countries are, I won't say pure, but I'll say pure in the sense that they're very gullible to media. So how do you view the average person from Thailand? How do you think they perceive CBDC so far?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I would say that 99% of people probably have no idea. If you actually ask them, if you did tie on the street what it is, they would not even know.
Right.
In the same time, I can't remember the exact numbers, but there's a quite high percentage of Thai people who actually own some crypto. I can look it up later what it was, but it was higher than average globally, let's say.
Okay.
So there must be people out here who, well, there might be just everyday speculators, but I'm
Right.
also quite sure there's some significant group of people who might get it better or worse. There is at least one big centralized crypto exchange in Thailand, which obviously shows that there is some demand, right? They're making
Right.
money, and that there are people who are interested in this. So yes, I don't think Thailand is aware even remotely, or Thai people are even
That's interesting because
remotely aware.
they're definitely pushing the protocol over there. I mean, you see it in the
Right.
headlines, but that
Yeah.
it's one of those things. And the reason I ask is because I just want to highlight how if you're not involved, you do not know.
Hmm.
Because we all know CBDCs are a thing, and it doesn't matter where we live. We know that the majority of the population is clueless, right? But what else do
Right.
we know? We know that that is the next evolution of what we think of as money. And there's I mean, if you know anything about China, you understand there's nothing but downside to CBDCs. There's no two ways about it. They're going to control what you can buy, when you can buy it, if you can buy it. I mean, you know, eh, you got to just understand. And I mean, it's kind of one of those difficult things, Mark, that like I've battled with writing a book myself, just the thought of it, because how do you get this information out there? How do you get
Hmm.
people to understand that time is of the essence? It's almost like a hope and a prayer. It's almost like you either realize it or you don't. And I see it when I get comments and and messages from people, right? Because yeah, you're gonna have people that understand things at different levels because they're at different stages in their life. They've experienced different things. Like, to write a book, I gotta commend you first of all, and I'm sorry for not saying it sooner, but just writing a book by itself, I mean, that takes discipline, that takes dedication, that takes some supreme effort, persistence, and just all these things that are not easy for a human to have. So I commend you for just being able to produce a book, even though it's on something that you care about greatly, right? Because you got to just understand, if you've never put a book together before, I mean, it's not a 10-page piece of thing. Like, this is a sizable document. Like, you sent it to me in PDF form. Like, there was at least 50 pages in that thing, right? So, again, I salute you, because to sit down and put all these thoughts on paper and make them make sense so somebody else can process it, not easy, right? Just like you coming on stream to talk about what's on your mind. For some people it's natural, they don't mind, they're great at it, whatever. But for people like me or whatever, like, I'm not a very, like, I don't like streaming like that. I do it because I'm here to share information. But again, it takes effort, it takes diligence, it takes understanding of the topic in order to relate it to others. So this is why, I'm really taking a long time to say thank you for writing the book, because it's not easy and it's needed. Every little bit of information that we can get out there to the masses to help them understand that they need to look this way is important. And I know I might sound condescending or whatever to some people, but you got to understand this shit is time sensitive. There is no time to not be serious, right? Look at you, Mark. You were at a point in time where you were almost on the mat. You were down for the count. And it just so happened that crypto came in and you weren't even paying attention, but all of a sudden you realized you were all right. And just like that,
It's a
go ahead.
it's a very interesting thing you said, because this is this could get a little bit personal, and I mentioned like without any details. Well, guys, when you think about this, like for someone like me, and there is many people like me probably all over the world, all this COVID situation, whatever you make out of it, I mean, this puts a hard stop to your career after many years. And I think the worst part back there was like you feel you have absolutely zero control. It's not like you don't want to work. It's not like you are not willing to change the job. It's not like you are not willing even to move a country. In my case, I moved the continent, and still it just doesn't help, because whatever decisions the government's made, first of all, you couldn't influence it in any way. Secondly, is okay, we are just closing the world, we're closing the borders, and you can go and screw yourself, right? So basically, you could say like maybe you could do something else, but I know, okay, tourism was not the only thing affected, but you always have to look from a perspective of different industries, right? If that's your industry you're working in,
that was the main industry that was affected. That was the main one, because all travel stopped. Period.
Pretty much, yeah. So then, it's easy to say, but for some people, like, oh, you could do something else. You know what? I used to work with people who were really good at their jobs, be it high level hotel salespeople, general managers, or owners of travel agencies, and these guys were regularly telling me they are back to their countries working as cashiers in Tesco or whatever other Walmart there is. And you just realize it's just like, well, so you've been building something. You thought you've been building a career for 10, 15, 20 years. You got a lot of unique skills. You showed a lot of flexibility, maybe by living in 10 different countries. And when the government pressed the button, that just counts for nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It's just like, go back to Tesco and, make your $10 an hour, $15 an hour, or whatever they pay. And that's it. And if you don't like it, then lay down and die, because we don't care. I mean, the governments don't care, right? So everything you were teaching Wales, everything about we talked about, well, crypto is the solution if you do it right. It is, because this thing happened already. Some other things will happen in the future. I'm sure you. I've heard you and. Talking about this many times, and this was bad as it was, but that's not the end of it. That's sort of the beginning. Obviously, I don't have any proof for that, but my thinking is this was a big test, pretty much. They tested how far they can go, they tested what they can do, and I think it worked very well in their favor in majority. And I don't know, just wait for it. I mean, give it a few years, give it maybe a decade or so. And you see where we will be 10 years from now if you don't prepare, and that's not going to be pretty, for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's one of the reasons why I still stream somewhat to this day. And it's one of those things, man, where it's a fine line between understanding and not understanding. When it comes to this crypto space, it really is a fine line, because a lot of people really thought they had it figured out. And I mean, people that have been in the space for years, right? And they're the ones getting swept up in the BlockFis and all that other nonsense. And then they're not realizing that, this whole time, all they were was a part of a test. That test you're talking about, that's all part of that, right? And if you're not privy to that piece of information, that little bit of reality, I mean, you're going to get swept up like everybody else, and you're going to be in a position where it's indefensible, just like you found yourself. I mean, and this is kind of the thing that kind of weirds me out about the past few years. It's like, where else in time, at any point, in any story, in any history, in any universe that you've seen, does everything just come to a sudden halt? Nowhere. You've never heard or seen of anything like this. So why in the hell did it make sense for anybody to think that that makes sense in 2022 when we have the most technology, as far as we're concerned and as far as we know, in history? So clearly there's a lie going on somewhere, right? And you know, I tell you what, you talked about proof. I've sat here, man, and done hour upon hours of stream showing nothing but proof, and you still got people believing what they want to believe. So I'm of the mind that you don't even need proof anymore. If you do not comprehend after the past 2 to 3 years where the fuck we are, you just do not matter any longer. That's a fact. That's not a debatable point. And you have lived through that yourself because somebody else said, Mark, you no longer get to eat. Go fuck yourself. For no reason. But for some fucking weird, ungodly, fucking unforeseen, situational, I don't know what the fuck, you still have people making excuses for these clowns that made that decision those years ago. Now, as a person that is fully aware of where the fuck he is standing and sitting, because I'm actually sitting right now, I will never accept that as okay. And I will never respect anybody that thinks it was or even take them seriously. We cannot have a civil conversation because you don't live on this fucking planet. You just don't. What human being thinks it's okay for some random individual to tell anybody that you can no longer eat? Good fucking luck. Because that's what happened in 2020. Period. There's no other way to cut that one. I don't give a fuck where you work. That's exactly what happened to everybody. Now, some people, I was fortunate enough to work inside the beast. So I didn't lose my job. Of course not. Why would I? I worked for the fucking enemy. Pretty simple. But you didn't. You were all the way the fuck on the outside. So you got fucked along with everybody else that was on the outside. You see? So a lot of people at work ask me, like, I'm a fucking enigma at work because I've been working from home for 2.5 years. Everybody else got the death jab. Not I. I'll tell them motherfuckers they can kiss my ass. Now, people at work ask me, how did I get away with it? And I was like, I didn't get away with anything. I have to explain this shit because people just do not know. And these are people that are fucking educated, right? They're supposed to be smart individuals that went, like, these are people that are better educated than me. You have to understand. And what I mean is that they went to college. They got all the little fucking stickers. They got all the little fucking letters at the end of their name, right? They fit the mold that people would consider successful. But they're the ones walking around with a fucking clock on their neck. Not me. Even though we all do walk around with a clock, but you know what I mean. Like, they literally volunteered to die. A lot of these people. Whether they know it or not, whether they view it like that or not is irrelevant to me. But that's literally what they did. If you lost your job and you got a jab because of that, you just volunteered to die because some other motherfucker told you to. Simple. That's a fact. And they're still out here doing it. And they're asking for amnesty while they do it. I mean, yo, I can't respect you. You have no valid authority to speak to me or anybody in my vicinity when I'm around, and I know you're one of those people. Because who the fuck are you? You trying to tell me you're Jim Jones, and I'm not drinking your Kool-Aid, homie. You know? Do you know who Jim Jones is? Yeah. If you don't know who Jim Jones is, look into Georgetown, Jim Jones. That's exactly what happened in 2020. Whether you want to realize it or not is irrelevant. A lot of people out here still drinking the fucking Kool-Aid. Right? And this is why these streams matter. Your book matters. everything that we can do as a society to help each other, it goes a long way, because there's so much misinformation out here that people are literally committing suicide unknowingly. I mean, this is where we're at in 2020, 2021, 2022. Everybody all over got screwed because everybody else just thought it was okay. That's literally what happened. It's not because government said so. That's not true. It's because everybody else said it's okay. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to be lazy fucks and say fuck it. That's ultimately what happened. But nobody is going to be willing to accept that fact, because then that would mean that they got lied to, they got played, they got this, they got that. Nobody wants to admit that they were wrong. And that is exactly what's going to end up getting a lot of people killed, just putting themselves in bad situations, period. I mean, there's no two ways to put it. We don't got to get detailed. It's just, that's life. If you don't respect yourself, life is going to let you know you should. This is why bad things happen to us, right? The universe speaks, doesn't stay quiet. Question is, are you listening? And most people, my friend, are not. This is why we make these efforts, write these books, do these streams, have these conversations. I mean, you know, what do you think is something that you didn't put in the book that you could have put in the book? No, let me rephrase. What do you think is one thing you should have put in the book that you didn't put in the book because you knew you couldn't put it in the book? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you're asking. It's hard to decide because you know, on one hand, it's just like I wasn't really afraid to put anything in the book, like, you know, to pretty much self-censor myself.
I don't mean from a censorship perspective. I'm sorry. I don't mean from a censorship perspective. I just mean from like an informational perspective. Like, just like how we were talking about earlier, like you don't want to push people over the edge to not want to read the book. So that's what I mean. Not from a censorship perspective, because, you know, never mind that. They can't censor us. They could try.
Sure. Well, I keep wondering until today, is it actually detailed enough? Because pretty much in every single chapter, I could just provide you with more information or more details or whatever you name it. But also, like, from the very beginning, you know, my goal in my mind was like, okay, the shorter it is, but still within the size of the book and not some like brochure, the better, because, well, it's easier to, you know, digest let's say 100-something pages book than a 500 Bible, you know, and we could do that, right? I could write way more about, well, you can't really write much more about, let's say, hex and pulse chain without going to technical details, but I could go into everything we talked today about, or into everything you talk about on your streams. But then, you know, my thinking was that it would become kind of like watered down. You know, the main message would get lost in a way, being pretty much, okay, get into crypto, get the right crypto, and do it well, and just, you know, like you keep saying on your stream, sit on your ass the longest and wait, you know, and basically that was the message. So I actually don't regret that I haven't put something in this particular book, but actually our conversation kind of inspires me that, well, perhaps a revised edition or completely second additional book should be not out of the question, right? Because there's so many more things to talk about, actually. And like you mentioned before, I really like your approach about well, that everything matters, everything what we do, right? Some people like yourself are doing these streams. We have a lot of different YouTubers. We probably have a lot of people on Instagram, some other social platforms. Me and two other guys wrote a book, and, you know, yeah, we just have to spread this knowledge on whatever channel we can. You know, apply your skills to where you can actually make it useful. And, you know, for me, even though I already see that, you know, the sales of the book are going quite well, for me, it actually doesn't matter in the end. You know, if it's just 10 people who actually read it and apply the knowledge, and then perhaps, you know, drop me an email 2 years later saying, look, thank you, I did that and it worked. I'll be a very happy person. And if it's more people, then great, you know. So if I can reach, I don't know, 100 people or 1,000 people with a book who normally maybe wouldn't have been reached by YouTube or Twitter or whatever other channel, then I consider it a success already, right? And if someone else has a YouTube channel which only has, let's say, I don't know, 500 subscribers who are regularly watching you, and you have something interesting to say, that matters as well, because you're changing the world, you're changing people's viewpoint on very important, crucial things. And so I think we shouldn't underestimate anyone's effort, whatever they're trying to do, as long as they know what they're talking about. Because obviously, like every community, we might have some issues that, you know, people have more or less popular presence on all kinds of social media, but they don't even get it properly, right? So I'm like, well, that might be actually not useful, right? It's just like to put it lightly, right?
Yes.
But I mean, keep encouraging yourselves and other people around you to, you know, kind of come out of the shadows and spread the words. If you already made it, if you already know you're doing the right thing, then, you know, talk about this in whatever way you can, whatever you feel comfortable with. And let's support each other. You know, we have a lot of this. I mean, obviously, I scroll Twitter from time to time. I'm not very active there, but you know, I see a lot of these discussions. You know, about all kinds of subjects, right? So it's like, okay, let's pick the most popular one recently, which would be the outrage marketing by Richard. Right? Look, I'm not going to go into, you know, whether it's right or wrong, whether it works or it doesn't, or you know, whether I like it or not. It's completely irrelevant, and that's why I really haven't made any single comment about it, you know. And I just think, like, look, you know, if he thinks it works and he has numbers to back it up, then go ahead and keep it. You know, that's how we do it in sales and marketing industry as well, right? I mean, you do something, and you know, if you see hard statistics behind it, then it works. You know, and if you don't, then it doesn't. You know, and basically, you know, I would see it completely pointless of me pretty much, okay, now an author of the book, but pretty much a no one or you know, a random guy on the internet having an opinion and discussing what do I think about outrage marketing by Richard Hart. It's just like, I don't really want to waste my time, you know?
It's who cares? Who cares?
And engaging in these discussions, you know, either on YouTube or Twitter or Telegram or whatever, having an opinion about everything everyone else says, like, really? I mean, you know, do I care about some avatars with 5,000 followers opinion about whatever? You know, like, most people don't, you know, so it's a noise, you know. If you could actually spend the same time on actually creating, I don't know, a stream like you about different subject, write another book, which it will not be a competition, it will be just additional help.
100%.
You know, doing anything else you feel comfortable doing, instead of just like, but I think this, I think he should stop, I think this guy should not do whatever he's doing. I'm like, yeah, you know, just get a life and do something yourself, instead of just you know, nagging other people, commenting, attacking, you know, looking for, you know, the hole in the hole, let's say. It's just, you know,
that's a good one, hole in the hole. You know, it's one of those things, man, where this is easy, but people like to make it hard, you know, because everybody wins when everybody participates, and they're going in the same direction, right? It's like a rising tide lifts all boats, not some, right? Because if you're in the water, guess what? You're going to go up higher with the water level. You got no choice. So if people just acted in concert with that reality and they didn't think that their opinions mattered or whatever, it'd be a different place. You know, it really would. But, you know, unfortunately, people got their agendas, people got this, people got that. And all we can do is just keep on pushing forward and ignore the noise, you know, and that's something that I try to exemplify my actions by not engaging nonsense and just always driving the right information out to the masses, because I don't even share my opinion. I'll let you know when I'm sharing my opinion. But besides that, you're going to always get verifiable information from me. You know, it's the funniest thing I'd say in my experience is people just not, you know, we want to be in the investment space or whatever you want to think of crypto as, but you don't want to learn no math. just not going to be a good result for you. It's just not going to end well. It doesn't matter if you make money or not. It's just a matter of when before you fuck it up, because you don't know math. And if you don't know math, you're not thinking numerically, so you're just spending. You're not counting. See, and that's the difference between people that stay around long term in any capacity, in any endeavor, or they don't, because you're either analyzing, just like you said, right? We try something, we analyze. Are the results yielding what we expect? Yes, no. If yes, we continue. If no, then we change. I mean, that's life in a lot of ways, you know. It's just that we really don't do our best to kind of see it that way. But that's what reflection is all about. And that's why everybody add in their 2 cents, you know, because even me, I might do 2-hour streams, but man, I'm not Elon Musk. Nobody's coming to see my shit. You know, he sends a tweet out, 6 figures worth of people are retweeting it. I might get 1,500 views. You know, it's not comparable. So every ounce of effort that we can put in as a community tonight definitely matters, because how else are we going to get the word out? How else are we going to have people find that financial salvation that they need and they don't know is there? You know, because that's one thing about crypto. It's the contra to what you want, which is more fiat units of account. And if you don't understand that, you're going to get left behind, because you're going to think sitting in stables is something to do. And I'm going to tell you, like I told you, you as an individual have no business participating in stables. They're not for you. You better learn how to generate additional fiat income so that you can get all the crypto you can, because you don't actually know when the bottom's coming, and you better pretend like you don't, because you don't. And crypto is not now what it was a few years ago. And I've gone over this too. Just like I showed you guys how the top was taking longer than it should have, and people just thought it wasn't going to top out, but it did anyway. Understand, these markets, the fake crypto markets, are not the stock market, and they're not 2017, 2018. So you have to really be elegant about your approach. And by elegant, I mean trying, testing, seeing what happens, and then adjusting. I mean, we just talked about this a moment ago. I mean, that's what being elegant is. You try to find the simplest approach to the most complicated problem. And that's something that, you know, us math folk, like, that's what we really take pride in, because there's so many different ways of solving a problem. But what's the most efficient way? You know, that is always the best solution. You know, the most efficient way to solving a problem. Because hey, there's a lot of hammers, right? There's a lot of nails. There's a lot of materials to build, you know, shelter. But every shelter is not built the same. Every person that swings a hammer doesn't swing it the same, right? All these things are important to understand, because this is how you understand the makeup of the world, where you fit within it, and how you can add value. I was having this conversation literally yesterday, Mark, with a colleague of mine, about just adding value to the world. You know, and it's like there's so many different ways to add value, and people don't realize that adding value always yields a return, whether you think it's a monetary return or something else. I mean, the book you wrote is going to change a lot of people's lives, whether you realize it or not. You know, and I got to tell you now ahead of time, because, you know, I am just some guy on the internet, just like you. And just like you, I go out of my way to do whatever it is I do, whatever, right? Talk about the information that I have in my mind. And, you know, people really appreciate that. You know, people appreciate those of us that go out of our way to share what we know, because, man, it changes lives. It really does. And that's something that, Mark, I just want you to know, because it's the most important thing to know as a content creator. Um, People need information. And those of us that are out there searching for it, man, we just got to give ourselves the information that we need. Because if there's one thing I've learned, Mark knows something I don't know. I know something Mark doesn't know. all you folks in the chat know something I don't know, and vice versa for Mark, and vice versa the other way around, right? So what does that mean once we sit down, realize, hey, if we just add each other up, how high could we get? How high could we go? How much could we accomplish? And if you've been around Hex for a little while, you've seen that it's not really that crazy to accomplish lofty goals when a team of people say we're gonna do A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. So I just kind of wanted to end my segment of the stream with that. Mark, if you want to say any last words, man, knock yourself out. I just want to thank you again for your efforts for writing a book. And I also want to thank the authors that I haven't spoke to in the same vein, because again, everything we do matters because we're actually trying to do the right thing. So take it away, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone watching as well, and being active on the chat and resharing and so on. I would like to say two things to end it. Like, one thing is, obviously when I'm active when I can on social media, especially on Twitter, obviously we see that a lot of people are hurting in the bear market, which is always the case. Maybe this time a little bit more than last time, maybe not, if they experience more than one bear market. I wanted to tell you, you know what? If you are the one hurting or wondering what's going to happen, or you have people who are in this position, just have patience and wait and sit on your hands the longest, like Wes is saying as well, because it will pass. It has to pass, right? Eventually. And doesn't really matter if it will take another 3 months, 6 months, or 3 years. You might feel like this is, an impossible time frame, let's say 2 years or 3 years to actually get to some really interesting place again on the markets. I would say, like, look, most people with normal jobs, full-time jobs, or even businesses or something, how much time it takes you to actually become successful in anything, right? How much time you have to spend building your career or your skills or your business or something for potentially much lower gains than you could get by, let's say, just buying Hex today and, staking it for, I don't know, 3 years or whatever. So, when I see people who basically, bought into Hex whenever, let's say even closer to the previous all-time highs or something, and then they just behave like, it's been the lifetime of pain. No, it was just over a year or around a year,
Right.
expand your time frames, and I'm like, when you look at anything more tangible in the world, like I mentioned, let's say a full-time job or a business building, where are you after 1 year, really? In a new job you started, or in a new business you started to create? Probably nowhere still. It's probably still a very, very long way
For sure.
if it's actually going well. And people in crypto just behave like, oh my God, if I put, I don't know, let's say $10,000 into whatever and I didn't make $1 million in 3 months, it's a disaster. And I'm like, no, it's just you have to expand your time frames. If you have issues with that, if you just cannot comprehend an idea why, let's say Pulse Chain is not out yet, and oh my God, will it be here, in December still, or maybe in March? Does it really matter in the end? Like, did you have any other opportunities better than that for the next few years or something? If, let's say, if you sacrificed some money for Pulse Chain and right now you are mad at yourself and maybe other people that it's not out yet right now, do you think if you put this money into, opening a coffee shop or something, you would be better off today or a year from now? I doubt so. My thinking is like, you just have to wait much longer, and whatever decisions you made before, whenever you bought Hex or whether you're preparing to buy right now, whatever you sacrifice for Pulse Chain and Pulse X, just have patience. It's going to work out, but you have to start looking at the longer time frames than a few months or even 1-2 years, because no success in any area of life is built in 1 year or 2 years. You might just get very lucky and you just did something at the right time and it happened to you or for you. But most things don't work like this, right? Whatever you look at, your skills, your jobs, your businesses, your fitness, your whatever, 1-2 years is usually just the beginning of actually, getting things done. Right. So that's the one thing. I don't know if you have any comments, Wales, about that.
Oh, no. I mean, look, I got to tell you, I 100% agree. I've been doing what I've been doing, man, since 2010, 2009, just trying to figure out what the hell is going on, but with a financial perspective behind it, economic perspective behind it. And I got to tell you, there's always something to learn. There's always something else to do. There is no finality to achieving anything in life. And I think your comments are very prescient in that fact and that aspect of that grueling everyday process that is waking up and going to sleep, right? Because in between waking up and going to sleep, we got to do all these other things. And we have to try to do them in a way that lends itself to some kind of success. And it's just not easy. So I 100% agree, man.
Great. Thanks a lot. Okay, so just to finish off, as promised, guys, the book has been on sale since last Friday, so it's almost a week. It's going so far very well. I lowered the price of an ebook to $1.99 because that's the lowest price I can actually, which can be actually approved by Amazon where it's being sold.
They gotta get paid.
I did it for I put it like this because the mission from the very beginning was like, look, I want volume, I want people, I want to reach out people, right? I put this price only for a week to encourage people to hopefully buy as many copies as they can, simply so it also climbs the charts on Amazon and gets more popular, and therefore it gets more visible to all kinds of people looking for financial books, investment books, crypto books, depending how high we can take it. So this price will be available for like 2 more days or 3 more days. I want to mark like the whole week of the HEX birthday anniversary. Then I will put it a little bit higher. Basically, what I would like to ask you to do, take advantage of it and buy the book simply to help to spread the word.
Right.
The way it works with all this algorithm is like, look, if 100 of you spends $2, and even if you don't have a Kindle reader, but you can actually still download the file. If the algorithm see that 100 books were sold, then you are climbing up the charts. Then you are perhaps becoming a bestseller list, and then more eyes on the book, right? Obviously, I would love if you read the book and you actually enjoy it, but even if you don't read it for whatever reason, I'm just trying to reach as many people as possible, especially those who haven't heard about HEX yet or a proper cryptocurrency. So, all of you guys have a certain level of knowledge, which you might not need from me anymore or from my book. But the idea here is, how we can make sure that this book reaches as many people as possible. So I would encourage you to try to take advantage of the lowest possible price. You will just help me to sell more at the low price, but at the same time, it's just the numbers which count for the algorithms to make sure the book reaches more people. There is a paperback option as well, which I also have very little control of the price because of the production cost. This is set to $19.99. This, I think, could be a very good onboarding tool for you to give away, right? So again, if you want one, by all means, help yourself. That price will not change, and it's not changing at all. But if you have friends or people interested in HEX, in crypto in general, I think that could be a great Christmas gift. It could be any other kinds of gift for whatever occasion, or even without an occasion.
For sure.
Some of us don't really have time or don't like YouTube. Some people learn better from reading stuff. And it's, you know, I just think it's also a cool thing to do. Like, okay, someone asks you, so what is this thing about HEX? You told me about HEX, but I don't get it. You know, can you explain to me? I'm like, well, you know, spend $20, give him a book, and be like, well, you know, read that and let's have a chat, right? And then, you know, if they actually put an effort into reading the book, then they should understand enough to be able to ask you more questions and get actually hooked up, thankfully, to the whole idea.
Have an actual conversation.
So yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Learn a little bit more, get their mind open to what maybe they didn't understand, an idea, a concept that maybe you can help click. And I mean, and this is the thing, right? I think that those comments are very important because it's about getting the information out there. However, we got to get it out there, you know, and then being able to have conversations with people because, you know, it's like what we were talking about before, right? We know all these people that are well off now in dollar terms, but they don't see the freight train that's coming directly their way, and they're not trying to see it, you know, and other people, they're just looking for a way out. They need to find something, and $20 might just be the ticket. I mean, I remember it cost me $500, $600 to realize that I made a bad choice. As soon as I got out of the military, it cost me $500 to figure that out. $20 is nothing. And this was 16 years ago when $500 was a lot of money. Now it's nothing. So, you know, $20, it might not get you a lot, but as far as information goes, that's a pretty good price that I would say you could put on life-changing information. So, man, with that, you know, I got to thank you again for coming on and giving us your time. And again, thank you for putting in the effort to put in that book together. And, you know, just being a part of the content creating crew that we have within the community that, you know, it's easy for people to criticize, but it's difficult for people to sit down, be disciplined, and produce something that is of value add to society, right? Which is easy to just pretend. And you know, I commend you for not pretending. I commend you for sitting down and actually putting some work in and producing something of value. And thank you also for taking the time again and sitting with us, man. And you know, if you got any last words, you know, get them out. Otherwise, you know, thank you and thank everybody for joining the stream tonight. Guys, the book is on Amazon, right? Be sure to look up The Second Crypto Revolution on Amazon. You see his website right next to his name on the screen, secondcryptorevolution.com. Let's get this information out there. Let's get people educated. Let's get people motivated. It's easy to stay greasy, but let's get clean. Let's build this winning team. Peace.
Thank you.
Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. Yep. That's it. Yep. That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. These motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. I mean, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Y'all deep. Everybody. My God.